The late-night glimmer of my phone screen, casting eerie shadows across my room, had become my new normal. My thumb, now trained in the art of swiping, hesitated tonight. It was past midnight, the wind outside howling like a chorus of whispers, when her profile appeared. Her name was Eliza, and her eyes, pale and piercing, seemed to flicker with a hint of malice or mischief. I swiped right. The instant nudge notification sent a shiver down my spine, not of fear but thrill. I messaged her, my fingers tapping rapidly on the cold screen. "Hello, Eliza." Couldn't help but notice those eyes. A reply came quicker than expected. "They've been waiting for you." I paused, unsure how to interpret her words. Laughing it off, I continued our chat. Eliza was intriguing, weaving words into chilling tales that danced around the supernatural. Each story, more terrifying than the last, kept me hooked. She proposed we meet, and I, driven by a mix of fascination and intrigue, agreed. "Meet me at the old Willow Creek Bridge," she texted, "midnight tomorrow. You will see me." The next night, under a cloak of unsettling fog, I made my way to the bridge. The air was thick with mist, and the moon was a mere sliver, barely lighting the path before me. As I approached, the silhouette of a woman appeared. It was Eliza, standing unnervingly still at the center of the bridge. Her face was obscured by darkness. "Eliza?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. She didn't move, nor did she speak. I stepped closer, the wooden planks creaking under my feet. Suddenly, she turned, her face ghastly pale, her eyes not the beautiful gray I remembered, but a deep, soulless black. "You came," she whispered, her voice hollow. Her sudden appearance startled me, and I stumbled back. "What's going on, Eliza?" "Why are your eyes?" I began, but she cut me off. "SHH," she hissed, her finger to her lips. "Listen." The wind seemed to carry voices, soft and whispering, growing louder as if approaching. The sound was disorienting, coming from all around us. I looked around frantically, trying to locate the source of the voices. "What is this?" I demanded, fear creeping into my voice. Eliza smiled, a twisted grin that sent waves of dread through my body. "They're here for you," she said, stepping aside. Behind her, figures began to materialize out of the mist, their forms vague and shifting. Panicked, I turned to run, but the planks beneath my feet began to rot instantly, crumbling away into the dark waters below. I turned back to Eliza, pleading, "What do you want from me?" Her laughter echoed around the bridge, chilling and merciless. "To show you something," she replied, her voice now coming from all directions. The figures closed in, their faces ghastly and distorted, eyes hollow. I felt hands claw at my clothes, pulling me toward the edge of the bridge. I struggled, but their grips were like iron. Just as I was about to be dragged into the murky depths, I awoke. I was in my bed, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. It was just a dream, I told myself, a nightmare. But as I sat up, my phone buzzed. A message from Eliza. "Did you enjoy my visit?" I froze, staring at the screen. The date on my phone showed that it was tonight, the night we were supposed to meet. It hadn't happened yet. Confused and terrified, I tried to convince myself it was just a bizarre coincidence. I resolved to stay in, ignoring her messages that began to pour in. Each one grew more insistent, more ominous. Finally, midnight arrived, and with it, a knock at my door. I approached slowly, peering through the peephole. There was no one there. I sighed in relief, turning away. That's when the power cut out, plunging my apartment into darkness. My heart raced as I fumbled for my flashlight. The air grew cold, so cold I could see my breath. I shivered, not just from the chill, but from the sudden feeling of being watched. I turned the flashlight on, the beam cutting through the darkness. As it passed by the mirror in the hallway, I caught a glimpse of something behind me. Whirling around, I found nothing but empty space. My breath quickened, and I turned back to the mirror. There, in the reflection, stood a figure shrouded in black, its eyes hollow, like those of the apparitions on the bridge. I dropped the flashlight in shock, its light flickering as it rolled away. The figure in the mirror stepped forward, reaching out. I could hear a whisper, like whine through dead leaves, "Come back to the bridge." I backed away, tripping over my own feet, scrambling to get away from the mirror. I grabbed my keys and phone and fled from my apartment. Outside, the night was unnaturally quiet, the fog from my nightmare now real and enveloping. My mind raced as I headed toward my car, the whispers growing louder. "Don't leave," they moaned. "Stay with us." I fumbled with my car keys, dropping them as a figure materialized in front of me. It was Eliza, or something that looked like her. "Why are you running?" she asked, her voice a mixture of curiosity and malice. I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed my keys and unlocked the car, throwing myself inside and locking the doors. I started the engine, the car's headlights cutting through the fog, illuminating Eliza standing just in front of the bumper. She didn't move, just stared as I drove away. As I sped down the street, my phone began to ring. It was Eliza. I ignored the call, throwing the phone onto the passenger seat. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I saw her, sitting in the back seat, her eyes now glowing red. I screamed, losing control of the car. It spun, crashing into the side railing. When I regained consciousness, I was back on the bridge, surrounded by the whispering figures. Eliza stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with a dark light. "Welcome," she said. "You cannot leave us, not anymore." The figures began to laugh, a sound that filled the night, echoing off the water below. As they closed in, everything faded to black. The story hangs here, awaiting the next command to unravel further horrors that lurk in the shadows of this haunted tale. My senses swirled as darkness clawed at the edges of my consciousness, my body anchored in place by an invisible force. I could feel the chilling breath of the figures as they encircled me, their faces inches from mine, their eyes empty voids. "Do not fear," Eliza whispered, her voice a serpent's hiss. "This is only the beginning." The fog seemed to thicken, wrapping around us like a cold, damp shroud. I tried to speak, to scream, but my voice was smothered by the oppressive air. One of the figures, taller and more defined than the others, stepped forward. His features were grotesquely twisted, his mouth a gaping maw of darkness. "We have waited," he rasped, his voice echoing from within the abyss of his throat. His fingers reached toward me, long and skeletal, tipped with nails that seemed to drip with a ghostly light. As his hand touched my forehead, icy pain shot through my veins. I could see flashes of other victims, their eyes wide with terror, their mouths open in silent screams. "You are one of many," the creature continued, "but you will be special." The coldness spread, numbing my limbs, sinking deep into my bones. Eliza moved closer, her eyes now swirling with a dark fire. "They are the lost ones," she explained, gesturing to the encroaching shadows. "And you are to join them." Her hand brushed against mine, cold and insubstantial, yet somehow burning. "Do not resist. It makes the pain worse." I glanced around, desperate for an escape, but the bridge seemed to stretch into infinity, its ends swallowed by the fog. Another figure approached, smaller, with a limp. As it neared, the air grew colder, if possible, and I could hear the faint sound of chains dragging along the ground. The ghost's face was sorrowful, tears of blood streaming from empty sockets. "Help us," it moaned, its voice a chilling wail that seemed to come from deep underground. The sky above began to swirl, a vortex of clouds spinning slowly. Lightning flashed, illuminating the ghastly scene with stark, white light. Each flash revealed more of the lost ones, their numbers greater than I had first realized. They began to chant in a language forgotten by time, their voices a discordant melody that made my head ache. Eliza's laugh cut through the cacophony, sharp and clear. "Isn't it beautiful?" she asked, her face alight with a twisted joy. "They sing for you, for your arrival." She danced around me, her movements fluid and unnerving. "Join us, join the dance of the damned," she sang, her voice lilting and sweet yet filled with an unspoken horror. I felt my resolve weakening, the darkness creeping into my mind, whispering promises of release, of an end to the terror. But a spark of defiance flared within me, fueled by the visceral fear of losing myself to this nightmare. "No," I managed to gasp, the word a mere whisper yet laden with determination. Eliza stopped her dance, her expression one of surprise. "No?" she echoed, a frown marring her perfect features. "You dare defy us?" Her tone became menacing, the playful malice replaced by something far darker. "You will regret this," she hissed, her eyes now blazing pits of fire. The chanting grew louder, more insistent. The figures converged on me, their hands reaching, grabbing, pulling at my clothes, my hair, my skin. I struggled against them, but their touch was paralyzing, each contact sapping my strength, pulling me deeper into despair. Suddenly, a clear voice cut through the noise, strong and commanding. "Leave him be." The crowd parted, and a new figure emerged. Cloaked in white, his face obscured by a hood, he radiated a fierce light that seemed to push the shadows back. The lost ones hissed and recoiled, their forms dissolving slightly at the edges. Eliza snarled, her form flickering between that of a beautiful woman and something far more sinister. "You cannot have him," she spat at the newcomer, her voice dripping with venom. "He is ours." The cloaked figure advanced, his presence calming the tumultuous air. "He is not yet lost," he stated, his voice resonant with a power that vibrated through the very air. "And I will not allow you to take another soul." He extended a hand toward me, and despite my fear, I felt a glimmer of hope, a chance for salvation. The bridge trembled beneath us, the structure groaning as if in pain. Eliza and the cloaked figure faced each other, the air crackling with the energy of their confrontation. The lost ones circled, their moans louder, more desperate. I felt caught between the forces of light and darkness, my fate hanging in the balance. As the cloaked figure stepped closer, Eliza unleashed a scream that seemed to shake the heavens. The story hangs here once again, teetering on the edge of darkness, waiting for the next words to tip the balance. Eliza's scream reverberated through the night, her fury palpable as it echoed off the bridge. The air around us crackled, thick with power and malice. The cloaked figure stood resolute, his light a beacon amidst the encroaching darkness. "Enough," he thundered, his voice rolling like distant thunder. The ground shook slightly under his command, and even the lost ones paused, their cries dimming into hesitant whispers. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out, my voice weak but filled with a desperate curiosity. The figure turned to me, his face still hidden under the hood, but his eyes, bright and piercing, bore into mine. "A guardian," he said simply, "one of many who watch over the crossroads of fate." His words, though cryptic, carried a weight that felt as old as time itself. Eliza laughed, a sound that was both beautiful and terrible. "A guardian," she mocked, her voice dripping with disdain. "You keep your watch, yet so many slip through to us." Her form flickered, now almost translucent, shadows swirling around her like smoke. "Why him? Why now?" she demanded, her gaze intense and unyielding. "He has a part yet to play," the guardian replied, his tone unflappable. "And you know well the rules, Eliza. You cannot claim him before his time." His stance was protective, a shield between me and the gathering dark. Eliza's face twisted in rage, her beauty marred by the malevolence that now fully took shape around her. Around us, the atmosphere tensed as if the very air awaited her response. With a shriek that split the night, Eliza summoned more shadows, their forms more grotesque and terrifying than before. "Then we shall see whose claim is stronger," she hissed. The shadows lunged, a mass of darkness that surged towards the guardian's light. The guardian raised his hands, the light from his palms expanding, pushing back against the darkness. "Stay behind me," he instructed, his voice firm yet calm. I nodded, backing away, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, and the echoes of the lost one's cries filled the night, a haunting chorus that seemed to mourn an inevitable tragedy. As the battle ensued, the bridge became a battleground of light and shadow. Each flash from the guardian's hands illuminated the scene in stark relief, the gnarled faces of the shadows, the steadfast glow of the guardian, and Eliza, her form now shifting rapidly between horror and beauty. "You cannot win this," the guardian declared as he repelled another wave of shadows. "He is not yours to take." Eliza's response was a growl of frustration, and with a forceful gesture, she directed a blast of dark energy towards me. Reacting swiftly, the guardian deflected it, but the effort seemed to drain him. "Why do you protect him so?" Eliza spat, her eyes alight with a furious fire. "What is he to you?" "He is a soul not yet lost, one who may yet choose his path," the guardian replied, catching his breath. His light seemed dimmer now, the constant barrage taking its toll. I felt a surge of fear, realizing that if he faltered, I was defenseless against whatever horrors Eliza wished upon me. The confrontation continued, the air now a swirling maelstrom of opposing forces. Eliza summoned more of her dark minions, their screams a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm the guardian's resonant voice. But he stood firm, a rock against the tempest, his every word and gesture imbued with the power of centuries. "I will not yield," he declared, his voice echoing powerfully. "Not tonight, not here." With a decisive motion, he unleashed a wave of pure light, brighter than anything I had seen. It swept across the bridge like a tidal wave, washing over Eliza and her minions, causing them to shriek and recoil. Eliza, caught in the blast, screamed in rage and pain. "This is not over," she vowed, her voice distorted by the light's power. "I will have him, one way or another." With that, she and the remaining shadows dissolved into the mist, leaving behind only the chilling echo of her promise. The guardian turned to me, his light dimming to a soft glow. "You are safe, for now," he said, his voice gentle. "But remember, the darkness is never far, and choices must be made." His words hung in the air, a solemn reminder of the night's revelations. As he began to fade, like the last star at dawn, I realized the bridge was quiet, the fog lifting. The nightmare seemed to pause, a breath held between the throes of terror. "Wait," I called, not ready to face the world alone with this new knowledge. "What do I do now?" His voice, now almost a whisper, drifted back to me. "Choose wisely," he said, and then he was gone, leaving me alone on the bridge, the first light of dawn creeping over the horizon. The story hangs once more, teetering on the edge of light and shadow, waiting to be continued. The dawn broke with a hesitant light, illuminating the bridge and dispelling the last of the fog. The nightmare's chill lingered in my bones as I stood alone, pondering the guardian's final words, "Choose wisely." As the sun rose, casting long shadows on the wooden planks, I felt a profound sense of isolation, a realization that my encounter on the bridge had changed me irrevocably. I made my way home, the guardian's light no longer guiding me, but his warning echoing in my mind. The city seemed different now. Every shadow seemed deeper, every fleeting movement a potential herald of darkness. I knew I couldn't just return to my old life, not after what I had witnessed. I needed answers, and the only person who could provide them was Eliza. I spent the day in restless contemplation, jumping at every phone notification, half expecting to see her name. But there was nothing. As evening approached, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront her, to end this once and for all. I returned to the bridge as night fell, the place where everything had begun. The wind was cold, whispering through the trees like the faint voices of the lost ones. I waited, watching the darkness deepen, feeling the weight of the night settle around me. Hours passed, and just when I thought she wouldn't show, I felt her presence. "You returned," Eliza's voice came from behind me, not as a shout, but as a murmur in the dark. "I needed to end, Eliza," I said, my voice steady despite the fear that clawed at my insides. "Why me? Why all this?" She stepped into the light of the moon, her form solid yet somehow still ethereal. "Because you are like us," she replied, her eyes reflecting the moonlight, sad and ancient. "Torn between two worlds, able to see what others cannot." "I am nothing like you," I countered, feeling a surge of anger. "I don't belong to your world of shadows and despair." Eliza moved closer, her gaze intense. "But you could," she whispered. "You could join us, be free of the human frailties and fears. You could be eternal." The offer hung in the air, a temptation wrapped in the guise of horror. I thought of the guardian, of his fight to save me, and I knew I couldn't give in. "No," I said firmly. "I choose my path, and it's not with you." Her expression darkened, and the air grew cold, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees in seconds. "Then you will suffer," she hissed, her face contorting into a mask of rage. "You will be haunted, always." "I'll take my chances," I replied, my resolve hardening. I had seen the darkness she inhabited, and I wanted no part of it. Eliza screamed, a sound so filled with fury and pain that it seemed to shake the bridge itself. She lunged at me, but before she could reach me, a brilliant light pierced the night. The guardian appeared between us, his radiance blinding. "This ends now," he declared, his voice resonant with power. He raised his hands, and a wave of light washed over Eliza. She tried to fight, her own darkness clashing with the light, but she was weakening. "You have made your choice," the guardian said to me, "and you have chosen well." With a final, ear-splitting shriek, Eliza's form dissipated, her essence scattered by the guardian's light. The night fell silent, the only sound the gentle rustling of the trees. The guardian turned to me, his form starting to fade. "Remember," he said, his voice now a whisper, "the darkness is never far, but light will always follow. You are not alone." And then he was gone, leaving me alone on the bridge, the first streaks of dawn painting the sky. I walked home, feeling lighter, the terror of the night lifted. I knew there might still be darkness in the world, shadows lurking in the corners of my vision, but I also knew there was light. And in that knowledge, I found peace. The story of that terrifying night on the bridge, of apparitions and lost souls, of choices between darkness and light, ends here. The horror has been faced, the choices made, and the light has prevailed. No longer haunted by what might have been, I move forward, carrying the lessons of that night, knowing that whatever shadows may fall, there will always be a dawn.